All right. Let's get this going. Gonna get started here in just a minute. And gotta make sure that we're nice and up and running. Right. So where we left off, as you can see here, we started to get a little bit of detail and definition in the steps. Whoa. Don't want any of that. Still have a few little troublesome areas where things are a little inconsistent. I'm just going to touch these up real quick. Turn that down a little bit. Okay. Trying my stream looks like over here to make sure that the audio is on. Alright, it's all working fine. Cool. Alright. So we're gonna just start this off by getting some brush strokes in. Kind of warm up the hand a little bit. Alright, so biggest issue is on like the edge of the stairs. They tend to kind of droop a little bit, and we don't want that. I want them to go kind of straight across, at least to a degree. It's okay if they sag a little bit because they're going to be like these beat up old stairs, so if they do end up kind of like sagging a little bit because they're on the edge, like that's not the worst thing in the world. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of like drawing out what I want these stairs to kind of like look like on the edge, because when I go back through and fill this out, I'm just using a color that I know I'm going to want to get rid of, so that way it looks it's intentionally looking bad, so I go back over that later on. But yeah, so just fixed a little bit of that droop on the steps a little bit here. That's all I'm trying to do right now, and then I'm gonna move on to something a little more interesting, a little more entertaining, just because like last stream focused like almost entirely on these stairs and that stonework, and while this image is like largely stonework, it doesn't need to be explicitly so. So we got this background image here, this church, and the trick with it is going to be vaguely detailed. So we're going to add details into it, but we're not going to add a lot because it's so far away that if we start adding too many details, it won't look real. Because, you know, at a distance, it's not going to have, you know, it's the equivalent of squinting. You lose a lot of definition. Instead of just talking about the artwork itself, I thought I'd talk a little bit about my my week. It's been kind of a hectic week. I tell you what, like this entire month has been like the month of testing my patience with everything. Like, so let's see. I got a letter from the tax and tag office about one of my cars, and they were saying that when in Georgia, what they do typically is they will appraise your vehicle. Like, so when you get a new vehicle or whatever, they appraise the vehicle, and then they charge you a pretty hefty upfront tax on it. But then, like, to renew your registration every year is only like $25. And so, you know, it stings up front, but it's not that bad overall. Well, when we moved to Georgia a year ago, they appraised one of my vehicles wrong. So I ended up costing me an extra $250 this month to get that fixed, which by itself was not fun to run into $250 expense you weren't expecting. But then on top of that as well, the car that I drive most of the time had a pretty serious problem with the tie rod, and I had to replace that, the front two tires, and then get an alignment done. And then now the other car needs an alignment done because it ate up its front two tires as well. So it's just you know, lost a ton of money this month on just happenstance, more or less. You know, what are you going to do about it? You can get angry. Fortunately, I've been pretty busy with my freelance work, and that's helped keep me from going broke or going without a car. And I guess it's probably like the best thing about when you're working with clients is that, you know, you can kind of plug them for a little bit extra work. You're like, hey, what do you got coming? This, that, and the other. And you can kind of start to, you can drum up more work that way. And that's something that it's hard to do if you work like for a regular employer. I mean, some employers, like if you're working retail, you can be like, hey, do we have any extra hours I can squeeze out? But, you know, unless you're doing pretty well in retail or your expenses aren't that bad, like that's a hard way to do it. I've worked retail, and I remember Like, that's a really hard way to try to make it more money. I mean, it counts, especially if you can go into overtime or whatever, it counts. But, you know, there's... when you do stuff freelance, you're bidding out a job, or you're taking in a commission or whatever, so you know exactly how much you're going to get out of that. You know how reliable it's going to be. Now, granted, there is you can argue and say, well, you know, you don't know if the clients are going to have it. Well, you don't know if your boss is going to have extra hours of work either. So in that regard, they're very much the same. The difference is, though, is that I can sell my clients on extra work, or I can get extra clients or whatever. You couldn't just, well, I guess you could, but it'd be difficult to just get another job and get it paid, you know, get a first paycheck in a reasonable amount of time. Whereas, like, if I go to somebody, I'm like, hey, you know, you need a shirt design, or you need stickers, or stationery, or a website, you know, page update or something, you know, like any of those things, I can go to them real quick and, you know, squeeze out some extra money. And when you do things freelance, the beauty is that you're able to ask for, in most cases, and I'm not going to say in all cases because that's unfair too, or untrue, you can usually ask for, you know, a fairly decent amount of money, because, you know, you're a professional first, and you should be a professional first and foremost, so you're getting really good work done for them. You're saving them time, you know, especially if you came to them, like, I guess the way you'd want to approach it or sell it in most cases is like, you're being proactive, you're helping them out, you know, you make a case for it. And hold on a second here. Make sure I'm still going. Get some. So, but what I was saying was that, you know, you can, when you do stuff freelance, you have a little bit more control. And if you're running your business, if you're running your business right, if you're doing things, and I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but if you're doing things correctly, then you don't have to worry about work. The work is there. You know, are you doing what it takes to be the guy that's getting the jobs, or the girl, respectively? Excuse me. Are you the person that's able to get the jobs? And if you're not getting the jobs, then you have to ask yourself, why aren't you that person? Why is somebody else that person in front of you? And usually the first cop-out that everybody gives, and it's a valid one to a degree, but it's also not, is, oh, well, so-and-so is cheaper. Well, I would say that that's usually not the case. You're probably not gonna lose because of money. If you lose out on a job, it's likely because of either you handled the business poorly, or your work isn't up to snuff. I would say that is easily 9 times out of 10. That's what that is. Yeah, and the quality of your work has to be there to get the job in the first place. So if you're thinking that you're not getting the work, then you have to really consider, like, is your work worth getting? I'm finally at a point in my life, and I've always been the kind of person that doubts my own work. Like, I just kind of have like that negative inner monologue, which is bad, by the way. Get rid of that shit if you've got it. But I've always been that person. I always think that there's that next person who is doing 100 times better than me, doing it 100 times longer, or, you know, like, there's always an excuse I'm giving myself. And there's a few things that are true in this industry, and one of which is that, like, nobody cares about anything other than the quality of your work. And there is no age limit. There is no no one cares about anything other than the quality of your work. And that's something that you will never be, as long as you're in good health, you'll never be too old to do it. Like, you can be 90 years old, and if your work's awesome, and everyone's going to come to you for it. If anything, age becomes like a premium at that point, because they know you don't have long, and they want your work if it's great. But that's the whole thing, is like, is your work great? If it's not, then, like, figure out what you suck at and fix it. There's very few reasons I can ever think of that you can't improve. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. Like, I'm still, golly, I mean, you can see from this very work, like, I have a lot of areas that I can and should and will improve. In fact, that's the whole point of this cast, is for me to improve, you know, to get better. You know, I'm learning a lot of things. I'm still figuring out a lot of things. And even though I'm getting paid professionally to do some of this stuff, like, that's not the point. My work may work for what I do, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing I ever want to do. I guess it's kind of like why I got into art. Well, I guess not just why I like drawing cool pictures and stuff, but I guess it's really why I stayed with art, is that, like, I get so bored doing the same thing over and over and over again, that, like, with art, at least there's usually some variety, some variation to be had, and it's up to you to make that happen, really. You know, whether you get an employer that values that kind of stuff and has you, or if you're a production artist and you just kind of grind it out. I mean, like, that's on you to figure out what it is that you want to do with your time. And there's no right or wrong with that. I mean, that's one of those things, like, what do you prefer? And I kind of get bored doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. And although, like, you could say, like, oh, well, you just digital paint over and over again. Yeah, well, the subject matter changes vastly all the time. All the time. And even though I specialize in certain types of design or whatever, and people come to me for certain things, like, I still, like, all the time, it's very different. People want different flavors or different feels to their work. Who's... Hold on, I got a friend of mine that's watching. Yeah, it's actually not looking too bad. I got a buddy that's trying to message me outside of Twitch, and I probably need to stop responding to them while I'm trying to work and cast, you know, unless it's here in the chat. But okay, But yeah, like my subject matter changes so incredibly much all the time that it allows me to like never get too tired of it. I mean, there's some stuff that I do get tired of doing, but and I get a lot of like graphic design stuff, and I probably ought to do some graphic design casts for those who might be interested. All two of you that watch this. But you know, doing t-shirt design sometimes is, and that's what I get a lot of, t-shirt designs. Oh my gosh, all the time. Which, don't get me wrong, I don't mind the money because it's quick and easy money. But you know, that gets very monotonous because people get into trends with that a lot. Which I guess with every form of art, you fall into the trend mechanism. But with t-shirts, it's like everybody wants the keep calm and whatever, or the, you know, whatever the flavor of the week is for whatever the flavor of the week is for shirt designs or what have you. And so you do end up falling into a lot of that trend work, and that does become rather tiresome. But it did definitely pay for it did definitely pay for my lineman to get done, so I'm not entirely upset by it. I think sometimes people ask like, "Oh, how do you get clients?" Because that's super hard question. It's a super hard question, and you know, I don't know if I'm the guy to answer that necessarily, just because like I still have a hard time finding clients a lot of times. I use services sometimes. I use different like channels of locating people. Sometimes it's more favorable than others, but I do use sometimes some networking services that find me clients, which that is helpful. And I would always tell anybody that like that's a great way of going. Plus, also if you're using like a service, I mean, it's brutal and it hurts to hear it, but if your stuff's not making the grade, you're gonna hear about it. You're gonna know because you're not gonna get the work. And some places may not even like call you back. They won't even try anymore because it's not working out. So, but it's super useful to know. It's one of those things that like I'd rather somebody tell me so I can go and get good. So we're starting to get a little bit of image out of these rocks. And we don't want to go like wacky and like out of place and too detailed. This is the kind of stuff, and this is the place where like a suggestion of detail is good. Let the human mind kind of write the story, but make sure you get enough of that story written for them so that it makes sense. You know, just give them a little something to work with. There's some of that light kind of crest Crest over the top a little bit. That'll totally work. Now what we do want is a little bit of the major detail on this spire, because there's going to be like a little cut in here, and then it's going to catch a little bit of light going up. We're going to grab that same dark. There's a cut in there. I'm going to catch a little bit of that light going up. And then this has like a spiral to it. We're going to give a little bit of shape. There we go. But yeah, I mean, the hardest thing with doing what I do is the business side of things, just getting clients. That's way off. That's the hardest thing in the world when you're an artist, is just like getting and maintaining your client list. I'm fortunate on this one that like this is just for me. This is so I can learn more about what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. And you know, so I don't have to worry about the pressure from having a client, you know, having to be pleased with this. This is like, I guess it's more brutal because I'm the one who's putting the pressure on me, and I can be kind of a tough customer. So I wanted to get some of this water down here done, and I'm this is a whole new brush set for me, so there's so much I'm learning about these brushes. And I kind of wanted to play around with these a little bit to figure out what's going to create the water pattern and effect that I wanted. But you know, like I almost kind of wish this was for a client, this wasn't like a personal piece, because it would really force me to do, like I always find that I do better when somebody's put money down the table, because then it's a little bit more real. Somebody said, hey, I need this done by this point, and you know, I can't fail that, you know, like it has to get done right, it has to get done then, and it has to be correct. And usually it forces me to do a little more research, do a little more homework, do a little bit more studying, and figure out the best approach to, you know, getting the artwork done correctly. And I think I grow a lot as an artist that way. Like in this case, the opposite is true. Like I feel like I'm more worried about allowing myself to make slip ups and letting them pass off because no one's paying for it. But then again, like I'm super critical about my own work, so I don't know, because it's kind of a catch-22. Like I'm going to let certain things go at a point, but like I'll know that when they're terrible, and I'll allow it to a degree. Now the problem, okay, here's a perfect example of where there's a major problem. So I've started to do the detail work on this water down here, trying to make it look choppy. This does not feel like it's well above this water line. So you have to create that sense of depth that separates this to be higher than that water line. Otherwise you get that, like I said, the last few casts, you get that MC Escher type thing going on, that, you know, it ruins it for the person that's looking at it. They start to think that they're seeing they're starting to see realms of existence that can't be, because if that's a bridge that goes across and this comes here, these can't meet up. You'd have so much that doesn't make sense. But right now I haven't created anything that tells us that's absolutely so. So I may have to fix this corner a little bit, and I may have to create something that makes this feel like it's sitting above that water, which actually I have an idea. I gotta remember that brush. I love that brush. That's great for water. Take this one. One thing I could do is I could create this little outcrop. And these are the kind of things that I tell a lot of times, that when people are like, well, hey, how do you get this kind of perspective? How do you get this kind of thing? I'm like, well, you invent it. You know, you make that happen. Well, I really fell in love with the way that this... Don't fall in love with your artwork. You know, like, that's super important that you never do, is never fall in love. You know, there was a saying they said in art school, which, by the way, don't go to art school either, it's garbage, is kill your babies. Like, they always said, kill your babies. Don't fall in love with anything. Don't ever... And they were right about that. But, like, don't ever start making exceptions for why you're holding on to that one element. And the truth to that is that if you're holding on to one design element, and this is for everything, if you're doing kitchen countertops, if you're doing, you know, replacing upholstery or whatever, like, if you're holding on to that one design element, that means everything else sucks. If everything is leaning on that one piece, then the whole thing sucks. All of it. It's not good. That's the truth. And when you're talking about, like, doing concept art or anything like that, that's entirely true. That's abundantly true. If everything is hanging on one element, it sucks. If you're so hung up on one little piece, it's the whole thing's terrible. You love that one little thing, and that's great, and you should be proud that you did that. But kill your babies, dude. You know, never get hung up on how much you love that one little design choice you made. You'll make plenty of other good choices later on, but the first choice that you should be making that's awesome is to get rid of everything else that sucks. And if that means having to get rid of that one thing that you really like, and it's time to be brave. These little, like, grass spires I'm making will not probably make it too far, but this is more like a post-it note for me to say, hey, like, come back through and make little grass spires. But there we go, ta-da! Like, it's not good looking yet. It needs a lot of work to look like rock and everything, but that's how I'm creating that separation. Now to get back to that water, I need to find that cool brush yet. And if you use Photoshop, these brushes, and don't ever get too hung up on brushes. Brushes do not make the artist. If that were the case, then the artist itself is irrelevant. But you know, you can experiment and play with stuff. Actually, I really would not have even looked at getting someone else's brush set if it weren't for the fact that, like, one day I went to go load up Photoshop and I don't know what happened, but I lost my brushes. I don't know what happened to it. And that was a really rough day for me because I needed it. You know, I was trying to paint in a particular style, but I realized also, like, I have to follow my own rules. Like, you can't, the brushes don't make the artist, so I had to figure it out, and I ended up having to recreate a lot of brushes and to get the particular style that they wanted, and I did it, and I got it done. It was successful. It was fine. That was okay. And then I came across one of my favorite artists. The guy is totally inspired, and I speak with him actually. He's got his own Twitch channel. I think they're even broadcasting right now. Dave Raposa, and I've brought him up before. I got his brush set for Photoshop, and that is what I'm working with right now. It's way too dark, way too rich. And so I'm still kind of learning, like, what he has in his toolbox over here. Now notice I darkened out some of the water down here, and that's because if, like, where the light is right now, like, I want to kind of, like, make it feel like the light is falling a little bit harder over here. And, like, over here it's super saturated by the sun, as light tends to bounce off really hard at that horizon water line. And I'm actually okay with that water. I'm probably going to add on a little bit of ocean spray. Let me see if I can find a good wide, not very populated bristle brush or something. This might be fun. What does this do? That could be okay. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. So this will add a little bit of that ocean spray into the air from the water banging up against the rocks and stuff. I'm going to take this soft round here and oops, I did not sample that color correctly. There we go. I'm just going to bring this down so it still looks like it's going in, but it's being obscured by the light that's diffusing in the mist. Which those kind of water effects, when you do things like that, like the person that's going to be looking at your art may not ever notice that they're seeing that, but those little things are your salespeople. Those will, more times than not, just doing those little realistic little things will sell the work that you've done to the eye and make it real. And I think for right now, that's probably gonna work. I can come back through. Actually, let's just go ahead and we're gonna get some of this village. I like this little, like, stony village type area. Let's find us a kind of angled. This one might be fun. And for the most part, like, we don't want to define too much here. Like, we don't want it to be too obvious what's going on, but we do need to create the story. Up the opacity a little bit. Not too much definition here, so just be really careful. This is also where you want to like remember what faces you can see. I just noticed I'm still painting on the water layer, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned with that. These layers aren't going to be separated for any reason. Right now I'm just kind of creating shapes. I'm trying to think of like over here like some basic like little, they're more or less like, I wouldn't say they're farming houses or whatever, because there isn't really much in the way of farming over here, but there would be to the caliber that a farmer would have. That's the kind of buildings we would have over here. They're real rough. We'll put like a little tower. We're going to imply some like little windows here. That's way too rich. Opacity back down. Just trying to add some texture and some noise to it. Make it look like it's got some stonework. So that way when you look at it from a distance, you kind of get the idea of what's going on, but right now it looks awful. That little break of light that's right here is too much. It is definitely ruining that. So we're going to take that color. Take this one. There we go. That should look a little bit more like a busted up tower spire. So the elements that we have left are the very foreground elements here. These require attention, these stones up in the front. And the archways require a lot of attention, and then we're going to add in some like little trinkets and things like that to, or little like just objects to kind of define it. But I think the background is largely done. I think we just have this little triangle area here that will require the most attention, and it will. It's going to require a lot of attention to get that done. So you know, we'll figure that one out. But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this cast. And make sure you follow, and we'll catch you on the next cast. Thanks for watching.